Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Podcast, powered by First National. I am Adam Pawadic, sitting here with Aaron Cameron at the Western Canada Apartment Investment Conference in Edmonton.
Thank you.
We'll do. Yeah, so Sarah's here today. She's speaking at the conference, but more importantly, she is the co-founder and CEO of Simply DBS. I'm going to let her get into exactly what that is. I mean, I've heard her talk about it quite a bit, but I don't want to put words in her mouth. So maybe we'll start with, go back in time a little bit, how Sarah got into real estate, and that should naturally lead into what Simply DBS does.
So I started my career in real estate and brokerage, like many people do. I wanted to sell something big, and real estate seemed to be that asset class and that product. So I started at CBRE, which is super exciting and fascinating, fast-paced. Worked in research, then looked to forming an investment team with some senior executives, and then realized that there was a hole in the market on the hotel side with only one real competitor, and so co-founded CBRE Hotels for Canada, and did that until I left and moved on to more research, data, insights for my career progression.
And you were at Informa.
I was at Informa, yes,
which is how we met.
Which is how I met.
Yeah.
So at Informa, I heard about these two incredible podcast hosts that were changing the way people absorbed content, and I had to meet them.
Shout out to Amy Erickson for introducing us to Sarah, and then Sarah for taking the shot of putting us out on the circuit. Yeah, and so 7 years now, six and a half.
2018 was the intro, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So we are as we were recording live here in Edmonton at the forums. We've been doing this now for 6 years with a brief COVID pause because of Sarah. So this is a genuine, heartfelt thank you very much for the opportunity that you presented us. Now that you've moved on, nevertheless, it's your legacy lives on with lots of things here at these forums.
It's interesting you say that about a legacy piece, because my career has been built on coming into large organizations and established companies and finding underperforming assets or pivoting existing assets to create new revenue streams. So when I look at success and when I measure success, whether it's non-for-profit in multiple organizations from United Way to NAOP, et cetera, to companies, I always say, can the product stand on its own after I leave? And when I look at building and developing products, that is always that when I exit myself, can it still exist? And so I think that this is a huge success. You guys had an established podcast. It was best in class. Everyone was listening. The integration to Informa, I think, just superpowered it. And I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that it's still here and you're still doing it and it's going strong, because it really is a testament to what we created and amplified.
The vision. We executed on the vision, which is not easy to do.
No.
When you left, I mean, you always had this idea of starting this company. So maybe describe where you are today and what it is. And then I want to go back and kind of figure out when the seeds were planted for the idea.
So you've asked me to get personal. Here's my personal thing. I've always had ideas that were ahead of the market. So when I went to university, I wanted to do space law. And at the time, everyone thought it was really flaky. And they
I'm
were
thinking
like,
that right now, actually. Yeah.
So they were like, outer space law, why would you ever want to do that? And I said, well, at some point we're going to have, I'm really old. So I'm like, at some point we're going to have satellites in the air.
She's younger than Adam, by the way.
There's going to be garbage. There's going to be different governments, and we need law in outer space. But I was too ahead. Now it makes sense. Now we understand why we need that with all this floating garbage, with the satellites, etc. There's been multiple occasions where I've come up with ideas and pitched George Karras or pitched random other people and said, have we thought about this problem and how do we solve it? And what about this solution? But I've been too far ahead of where the market was going. This idea, Simply DBS, fit something new that no one's doing with the right time for it to happen. And it was big enough to come out of a large company and have a standalone company to do it. So that's what's, to me, really exciting about the journey to get here to where we are today, is taking all of those learned journeys of the past and applying them and saying, okay, those were all teaching moments to get here to do this.
And with your experience at Informa, with a wide view of the marketplace and the individuals, the participants, you obviously kind of had a sense that now's the time for me to make this jump.
Yeah, there's a notable hole in the market for demand data, and specifically in Canada, but also internationally. So when I was at Informa, we were doing content and publishing and repurposing and it was amazing, but that creation of the data wasn't there from any other source really across all asset classes, across multiple different pathways to have a true sense of what we do is we collect demand data. So
What's demand data?
So we're catching up to other industries, consumer goods,
Like who's
services.
great at it? Which industries are great at it?
Consumer goods.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at retailers, we're focusing on what does our customer want. That whole notion that a user of real estate, a tenant, a resident is a customer is somewhat novel. So real estate is now becoming, it's a necessity to understand what does that specific customer for that use case want and how do we satisfy that. When we look at it from office space, back to work, post-COVID, it's notable. When we look at it from residents, from living assets, we're seeing it not in terms of we need demand and we need to drive people back to work, but we're seeing it as how do we fix satisfaction, reduce the need to self-assemble, provide amenities and make sure those amenities and those services that we're providing are what people want so we don't have wastage. All of those big pieces of measurement that we were missing before. So we understand what the people in properties want at scale. We aggregate it, we anonymize it. We're able to inform both specific companies through learnings and KPIs and the industry-wide learnings as well.
So it's taking, if I can just wrap my own head around it.
AKA dumb it down. Is that
Yeah,
what you're
well, I
looking to
wasn't
do?
going to use those words, but you're collecting customer data, whether that be residents of an apartment building, tenants of an office, retail, industrial building, and you're taking that customer data, combining it with a whole bunch of other data sets, so market data, et cetera, and then giving that information back to the owners of the real estate for them to make better decision-making on the operations of their buildings.
Right. So
or products to offer their customers / tenants.
So B plus.
Okay, that's fair.
Thanks. So yes, we're not aggregating with other data sources. We're working with our clients, then take other data sources to say this is how you layer it on, but we're aggregating all of the demand data, so the customer data points that we ask. We have over 1,000 questions, and we look at every asset class and say, okay, now we're aggregating all of those learnings. So when we're talking about EV vehicles, we can talk about it from a condo, from an apartment, from an office, from a retail user. So we're combining all of the real estate specific data.
I want to ask you what it was like pulling the trigger on this dream and going from the comfortable confines of Informa and a salary
10-year established.
10 years established to, hey, I'm basically unemployed and I just incorporated this company that is worth zero and makes zero.
It was okay.
A B plus again? Is that?
I have never had a salary really before Informa. So I was always
brokerage is volatile income for sure.
I was always pretty much commission based and 100% since I started working. So I worked in retail, 100% commission. I was an excellent salesperson at Future Shop. If everyone remembers Future Shop before Best Buy, I made commission, 100% commission there. Then brokerage. So the transition was coming back home to performance-based compensation. Now, starting a new company and building that up, recognizing and being willing to take that runway up. But we've had exceptional support from the industry. We had exceptional support to start. So a huge supporter of ours and our platform sponsor is Yardi. Came up with spent a year thinking about it. So left Informa, said there is a hole in the market. We are not properly measuring demand data, and we're not using that data in a meaningful way. How do we solve that? The traditional linear approaches to, I have a survey, ask you a question, then we all go away, doesn't work. So how do we reinvent this? How do we reform our relationship with resident data? So went to Peter Altobelli after a year surveying the market, talking to participants, and said, here's the idea. And Peter said, 100% I'm on board. We'll be your platform sponsor. So the industry coming forward and being supportive and understanding the need for a product that wasn't really created yet was helpful. Being able to come back to incentive-based compensation was helpful. And then I have a really supportive family who were willing to take the leap with me and were willing to watch the growth. And then I wasn't sure with all of that I could do it. And then my incredible co-founder, Catherine, knocked on the door and said, what you're building is exceptional and I want to be involved. And we had a series of meetings and realized that this is something that we should be doing together. And then we were running, because she deals with insurance and taxes and operations and all the things that make my head really fuzzy. And she does it exceptionally well, including creating new products for us to then go out to the market with, where there's other holes in the market. So it's been a fun run.
So why don't you run down first? How many years has it been?
So we're coming up to 2.
And at the time, was at least like other countries you could point to that may be doing it better than we're doing it? So you could, when you're trying to launch, you can say, hey, we're trying to bring the Belgian model to Canada. Because I know that, Canada tends to lag in a lot of things, and innovation and real estate would be one of them for sure. So was there at least other countries you could look at and kind of model a little bit?
So the product we launched with was shapeyourspace.org. Everyone can go and Google it and go to the website. It's there. It is a circular feedback platform that's always on and always listening. So we install permanently in office, industrial, retail, living assets. It stays up permanently as a feedback link to residents, where they can come to when they want to have an opinion. When they need to express their opinion, it reduces vulnerability and allows for continuous learning for the industry. So that's what we launched with. Nobody does it anywhere across any business line. So it's not available where the customer is providing feedback when they want. That data is then aggregated up and used as a change agent and or to validate or augment decision making. There are other products we do. I know you want to talk about products. So we do custom surveys. Yes, people do custom surveys. There are third-party custom survey companies, and they focus on custom surveys, and they come in, and they'll do their survey, then they'll leave. Our custom surveys link back into shapeyourspace.org, and we see 10 to 15% naturally go in and do another survey because people want to give feedback. We then listen to the market, and they wanted a national study, both for advocacy and for preference and satisfaction. So we launched our national housing study. We were then approached by the industry to say, we really need to understand mental health in students, and students are indicators of future renters. So could we build a national student living index, mental health index? It's May, it's Mental Health Month. So we built the Student Living Index, which is a combination of preferences and how does our physical building and the communities we're building impact student mental health. And then again, the industry came to us and said, okay, well, now we really want to understand development. So how do we involve the community in our developments as they're happening? Or if there's an incident, or if there's an empty vacant space, how do we create demand data for that? So we built Activate the Space. And then we understood that there were companies in the US and other places that were doing resident journey software and tenant journey software. And we were approached by a couple players that said, would you build that into your complement of suites? And so what we're doing is different. Shape Your Space doesn't exist anywhere in any industry, in any jurisdiction. Circular feedback, it's brand new. The other pieces all exist, but no one's wrapping them together holistically. So you're looking at all your demand drivers under one roof rather than piecing them together. And then you're really able to get your learnings and say, okay, my resident journey is telling me this, and this Activate the Space is telling me this, and my Shape Your Space, my continuous model, I'm getting these data points, and that is creating the story that's going to change the way we're building, the way we're operating. It's going to create more revenue. It's going to reduce friction, whatever that is. You have all of your data feeding into one source, which is different, and nobody does it.
Who's valuing this the most? Like, who's going to be the biggest beneficiary from it over the next year of you out there doing this?
So we didn't realize when we were building it how it would value the entire chain of real estate. But from a resident, they're valued because they now have a voice every day, all day where they live. From an employer, from an office tenant, let's say, they know they're coming to work in a building that respecting where they work every day. The employers are able to attract employees based on the fact that we value you and we know you spend a lot of time in your office space. The property managers are using the data to make better informed decisions. The asset managers are making the data for KPIs on their property managers and to do capital allocation decisions. Investor relations is using the data to justify spend. ESG's using the data for GRESB certification, and then the capital's using the data to understand performance. So it really does hit on multiple different pieces, and we're very busy building different reports out. This year we launched our direct to customer reporting, where we're actually coming in now and saying, here's your scorecard of your housing provider or of your office owner. This is how they did on the survey. These are the pieces that they're going to work on. And thank you so much for your feedback. We value it and we understand it. And we're building those same pieces out for the property managers. So not only are they getting ranked, and other third-party providers, not only getting ranked systematically and statistically, but they also have scorecards that they're then accountable for. That so you can celebrate and then action to improve. So it's been super energizing, the iterations of the company and the engagement we've had for the industry to build products that there's been a need for, but never anyone to satisfy.
So let's just go through the products just to see how they complement, which you've kind of done, but start with Shape Your Space. So you said that's a feedback loop where I, as customer, can go and fill something in or provide like a comment or a complaint. Like, how does this not turn into just, my landlord didn't do this for me?
So we like to think of it as two things. One, it's a product for residents to have a two-way feedback link with their housing providers, but also the industry at large. So the questions change. There's a QR code. We install posters. We install via app. We install multiple communication channels. And then they have access to 10 questions that change every month. And those questions are questions that inform the industry that we've been asked or that we find interesting based on other questions that have, and then we inform our clients on a regular basis what's happening monthly, and do also measurements internally and benchmarking. They are able to then answer the survey, but if there's a question they don't like, if there's an answer key that doesn't apply to them, if there's feedback they want to give on housing in general, office in general, etc., they can go to Shape Your Space and they can give feedback through our portal. So it's the first time ever there's a reciprocal relationship. How many times have you had a survey and you've said, I'm just going to pick C because there's no other answer choice? Or if they had only asked me this, I would have been able to tell them that, and they would have been a better company for it. It doesn't really exist, that circular piece where we close the loop with our respondents. So that's what Shape Your Space is. We install permanently, 365. They click the QR code, they go to a web link, they answer the questions, and then they can always go to shapeyourspace.org that exists in the cloud and in the open domain and come back to us and say, can you ask this? I want an ice cream truck. I don't want a barbecue. Or we don't want honeybees. We want apple tree. Whatever it is. Let's talk about balconies. Whatever it is, they have a place where they can come to. And then it's represented and it's actually respected, we see in the industry, as a feedback loop for development and management operations, not my light bulb's out. My sink doesn't work. Because
how many buildings?
They have places for that. Do we have on it already?
Yeah.
So it's in the open domain. So it exists
for anybody.
In public for anybody. And we have multiple housing providers across Canada that have it already installed in their properties. I actually had one client called us and said, we just toured this asset and Shape Your Space was installed. And that was so exciting to see. It was a competitor asset. So it's installed multiple housing providers across Canada.
Because presumably if you're building in a neighborhood and there's this data available from another site in that neighborhood, like that's comparable information. Is that not one of the use cases for this?
Yeah, so we anonymize it and we aggregate it up. And so we don't provide data that's recognizable. So we would never give competitor data to somebody, but we can inform in nodes where, and this is where a national housing study comes in, and this is where our custom surveys come in and our Activate the Space products comes in, because we have so much data fueling into one centralized database. We're able to say with 99% confidence that this customer wants this, whether we're segmenting or grouping, bucketing by age or location or stage of life, we're able to take it because we have so many pieces coming in. So Shape Your Space is one of the pieces, but it is that circular piece. It's installed. It's that response. It's that mutual beneficial piece. And then all of our surveys link back to Shape Your Space at the end of the day.
So if I'm a developer and I just bought a site at Main and Main,
Yeah.
and I come to you, what are you giving to me to help me decide what to build?
So you can buy data from us. We can talk about layout, We can talk
Yeah,
about
like
technology.
would you give me the information? Say you should build all three bedroom. Jesus, you should build all 3 bedrooms at this site because of whatever the data says. Is that the kind of detail you can get down to? You should have rooftop patios. You should have balconies. You should have no balconies. Like, is that the kind of? Could you basically tell me what to build based on your data?
Based on the questions we've asked, we can give you the insights for the community you're looking to build. So I would caution against building for a demographic or build for a location. I would say build for the community you're trying to achieve there. Build for the prospects that you'd like to populate that property with, because what we're seeing is that sense of belonging and that community feel is desperately wanted in Canada. And the desire to rent, not the need to rent, is also there. So if you can fulfill the resident, the prospect, in terms of what they want to see in their future community and housing and home, then you have a win. So we would say, what do you want to build? How do you want to build it? Who do you want to bring into that property? And now we can advise you on what that group is looking for.
Are you seeing that more and more?
Yes.
And what kind of? Can you provide examples of the community segregation that's occurring?
Yeah, I'll say one thing first. The other product we have for developers that I feel really strongly about, and we are in the baby steps of getting into the market because, again, it's brand new. But when the site is acquired, we want to stand with the developer. So when the sign goes up, or even before the sign goes up to say, we're going to be developing here, we would like a QR code on the sign and a web link that says, what do you see? And behind that dynamic QR code and web link are questions that rotate throughout the entire development cycle until that asset's built. We're actually having the voice of the community come along
As early as possible.
as early as possible. And it's informing decisions, but it's also creating that inclusivity. And we also want that to then go to, okay, where are we marketing to drive the prospects for that community? That the Activate the Space product goes along the marketing campaigns and also goes at signage and on hoarding. So instead of seeing post no bills, security camera, stay away, you're trespassing, you're seeing now, what do you see here? How would you use this space? What does it mean for you to have this asset within your community? And it's creating a better relationship with buildings and neighborhoods.
Well, and memorable for the people that encounter it early on in the process. You can interact with the building a site at that point. That's going to stick in your memory a lot more than just walking by a building that says, sign up our email list for future rental opportunities.
And from a fiduciary responsibility, from a capital stack, so the industry, the economy is not necessarily hurting us because every dollar is scrutinized and every dollar is looked at. So we need to ensure that the spends that we're doing, from amenities to layout to programming to everything, are actually what people want. Otherwise, why are we doing it and why are we spending the money on it? So the capital has an eye on that now, and we want to show that justification. If I install technology for Wi-Fi thermostats or to open my door with my phone, or if I decide not to do balconies but to do luxury outdoor space, or I'm going to take a hit on parking, we want to make sure that that voice of that resident supports those decisions in a substantial way so that you're protected on your decision making.
Yeah, how many times have you toured a building or been in a building and gone to the amenity space and it's just ghost town?
So we're seeing that actually with co-working spaces in multifamily properties. So the luxury assets with really built out beautiful spaces, a different experience than a co-working room. So residents want to work in their living room in flexible space. So put a lot more receptacles for charging and power, and make sure that any placement of necessities within suite allows for flexible furniture movement, right? So they don't want to work at a purpose. I mean, they do, but for the most part, they want to be working in their living room in random spaces. And it's the same for certain types of assets. They won't use the dedicated co-working space. They want to work on comfortable lounge when they're actually in the common areas. So dog runs, dog washing stations, all of these different things that we're assuming people want. I mean, people do want dog runs and they do want to watch their pets, and then we can help with the hurdles that we're seeing upon implementation as well. So if you're considering doing something, we've heard all the hiccups along the way. So when you're installing new technology that has to do directly with someone's suite, there's a loss of control. So what's the feedback, and how do you then manage around that so that you can reduce the friction points when you're changing the culture of your resident experience? That's how we can help as well. It's really, it sounds like we can do everything, but it's so powerful what we're collecting because it's the aggregated voice and it's so many different touch points and so many different questions. So it's really exciting.
Well, how many property owners are out there just doing it by gut feel? Just, I think people want this, so
I think
going
people
with
have
it.
been surveying their respective properties for a while, but
But that's the top end of the market. That's the mid-tier
well,
ownership. Is
Well,
this,
that's-
or is that not who you deal with for this kind of product?
anecdotally, we've heard this with
Yeah.
property managers. Who's doing best? Anecdotally, I've heard this. With feedback at site, anecdotally, I've heard this. With events, I mean, events and programming within property across all asset classes is 20 to 40% lower in satisfaction than the actual physical built asset. So anecdotally, people are like, oh, it's great. But statistically, it's actually good, but it can be better. And then how do you make it better? Well, now that we recognize that it's a problem, we're asking questions like, what kind of experience do you want, whether it's a barbecue or an ice cream truck, etc. What kind of dog amenities are the most valuable to you, not just throwing something in because we think it's going to make sense.
Let me go a different direction. I asked you about the developer buying a property at Main and Main and what your suite product offers. Let's go the other way. I am a a small property owner, and I just bought 40-unit 1960s building in Parkdale.
Okay.
And I'm coming to you. Like, what would the solutions be, or what would be the products that you would offer an individual in that kind of scenario? The building's well established. Most of my tenants have lived there for 20 years. Like, it's a totally different vibe than designing from ground up what kind of culture I want to create in my new development.
So we would say the right thing to do really is to have an open feedback link, because even if everyone's happy, if there's problems or if there's changes, we are vulnerable where we live. So having Shape Your Space installed, just as a matter of course, is the right thing to do, where there's an anonymized third-party group where residents have a place to go whenever they want. It's the same in medical. We're not in medical, but it's the same in medical. If I was going for to a doctor's appointment and that person was theoretically saving my life, how do you then complain or express a different opinion? You're vulnerable in that space. So where we live and where we work has some vulnerability. So Shape Your Space is important. And then if I buy an asset, I do want to do improvements. And theoretically, every spend is more important because it's so impactful to my bottom line. And in theory, I'm not picking everything. I'm picking one or two or three things that I can do. So let's make sure those one or two or three things are the right things to do.
Based on the tenant feedback, customer feedback.
And also, I mean, we measure prospecting. So we look at where are you getting prospects from? Where do they want to come? We know that property-specific websites are the number one. We know Google reviews are highly looked at. So some of our survey products push to Google reviews, right? Like, we're understanding the touch points in prospect acquisition, all the way, how do they want to interact on that prospecting piece? And then when they're in community, how do they want to do maintenance requests? What can reduce friction for your company and benefit the resident? So as you're looking to create efficiencies in your operations of a new acquisition.
Isn't just like apps now for the customer to communicate with their property owner?
There's lots of apps and they do lots of different things, and you can toggle things off and on. So what are you going to choose? You can't say, you can go to your resident and say, here, you have everything. But it's like me coming to a client and saying, we'll give you everything. There's decision fatigue and stress, right? So you want to pick the messaging. We have buildings that we've surveyed, 100% of the properties have an app and 50% no. We have buildings we surveyed where 100% of the suites have Wi-Fi thermostats, and one of the biggest requests is Wi-Fi thermostats, right? Like, so we need to make sure that we're communicating properly with our residents, and so pinpointing where do I want to communicate and which ones do I want to turn off and on are really important. Apps. We say, I said it on a panel today. Someone said, "What is the number one amenity?" And I actually said an app, because it's becoming the heart of our communities. It's becoming all the touch points from prospect to application to move in to then theoretically leaving to stay within brand, within community, or going somewhere else. It's all those touch points. The app is starting to be central.
And adoption's pretty deep. Like most of the building will be on it. So it is an effective tool to manage.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And we're recommending to our clients, look for that one app. So as you become more technical and technology starts to have a larger role, that all your data points are feeding into one place and all your integrations are reduced because you're not integrating across 5 different apps. So look for that centralized piece of technology that you can do. But residents want to communicate via an app. They want to participate in the community via an app. So it is becoming integral. Small or big, big or small.
You're running out of time, but there's one more I wanted to ask you is I think one of the products you mentioned was the tenant journey.
Yeah.
What is that?
So we're doing resident journey software now, and there are other companies. You asked about competitors in other markets. Other companies do resident journey software. We have the benefit of asking so many questions in so many different ways across so many different products, where we're really refining those touch points and how to activate the learnings from that. So when you move in to when you move out, maintenance requests, move-in process, any other triggers that we assign, we're doing like 5 to 10 action points. When that action happens, we then trigger a survey. And then some of the questions then can push to Google reviews, which brings up our number. They can push to activating maintenance issues. And so we're automating that. Residents have an expectation and a desire for about 24 hours to be responded to, both on prospecting when I ask about a lease or when I put a maintenance request in. Resident Journey software is just powering the operations teams to do better, and it's creating efficiencies. That's what technology does, right?
Cool.
So we've built that, and it layers onto all of our other assets, which is really great.
I feel like every year we could have you back on, and there'd be some new level reached, some next advancement in the industry, trying to actually make housing something where people want to be, as opposed to forced into it. Yeah.
How much of your sales pitch is education versus like sales? Like you must sit down with a lot of people that look at you and go, geez, like I've never even thought about this stuff. I just run my building the way I think that my tenants want it to be run. Like how often do you face that?
For the circular shape your space piece, it's larger because we've never had circular feedback portals in our properties. For the overall demand data generation, I don't know if it's as much education as relief that we're reducing the frustrations that they've had. Because even if you're doing your own custom survey, who is actually activating that data? Our team is real estate only. Everyone comes from a real estate background, and we're focused strictly on real estate assets. So when we give reports back, dashboards back, products back to our clients, they're actionable, and they're saying, okay, as an example, Canadian residents feel most unsafe in parking areas. The number one thing they want is security cameras. So we come back and tell that. Rather than having rows of Excel sitting in a back-end data somewhere or stuck into the survey product that they used, they're actually getting actionable feedback and actual data points and making changes within their organizations. And when we see that, it's really exciting. We just did year-over-year comparison, another portfolio, similar questions to the previous year, and they moved up. Like they moved the dial, and that was really exciting to see.
Because they responded to what their customers were saying.
What their customers were saying. They were more satisfied. They were happier. Groups that were underperforming within a portfolio are now overperforming. And we're seeing the same thing when we're isolating and saying, okay, we've asked these questions, but did you know that very few people know that there's Wi-Fi thermostats and they don't know how to use them? Your residents are asking for an app, but they have an app. So let's talk about, and then so we come with a real estate perspective and my brokerage background. So my brokerage background was to look at large, complex assets and how do we create value in them, and how do we sell that property, right? So when we're looking at the data, we also come with a lens of what does the data mean? How can it improve our clients, and how can it provide a better experience, whatever asset class it is, for the customers? And then those reports and dashboards are going to our clients, and we're seeing their teams using them right away.
We're out of time.
You can probably hear in the background a lot of people coming out of the conference. Might be getting your closing here.
The party is starting. Thank you, Sarah, for coming on for the first time again. We really appreciated the patience that you showed when we discovered that we did not have your first episode. I would like to say this one was better.
Oh,
So,
I had more to
see?
say. We
It's
said
the-
less stats though. Last time I had all these data points and I was just spewing off percentages. So this time we'd had a more holistic conversation.
I think this one was better.
Okay.
It all works out in the end.
I'm thrilled and honored to be here. Thank you both so much.